14th, 2022 Board of Supervisors meeting to order. The first thing on the agenda is closed session. I'll entertain a motion to go into closed session under A1 personnel, A5 prospective business industry, A6 contract negotiation, and A7 possible litigation.
So move.
All right, I have a motion. I have a second.
Second.
All right, a motion, a second. Any discussion? I'll start the vote with Mr. Early,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. McCrone,
Yes.
Mr. Dixon,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Motion, have a second.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll start voting. Mr. Early?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mr. McCrone?
Yes.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
This time I'd like to ask DW to certify that we only spoke on in closed session, section 2.2-3711, A1 personnel, A5 prospective business industry, A6 contract negotiation, A7 possible litigation. Clerk certification, Mr. Early,
Also certify.
Mr. Collins,
I so certify.
Mr. Hill,
So certify.
Mr. McCrone,
I so certify.
Mr. Dixon,
I so certify.
and I so certify. And I would like to say, apologize to the citizens out there who an hour and a half in closed session, and we're gonna hope to maybe modify it to where if we can't get out, we'll get them time closer to 6 o'clock, then we'll just go into closed session after the meeting. So I will say, I do apologize for that. This time I'd ask Mr. Collins if he'd lead us in the invocation.
Lord, thank you for bringing us here tonight to deal with the business of the county. We pray that you give us guidance and leadership. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Move on to entertain a motion to approve payments and invoices. Approve them.
Make a motion to approve the invoices.
All right, have a motion to have a second.
Second.
Motion and second. Are there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll start the vote. Mr. Early?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mr. McCrone?
Yes.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Next, entertain a motion to approve the minutes for January 10th, 2022, January 24th, 2022, February 1st, 2022.
I so move.
All right, have a motion to have a second.
Second.
All right, have a motion second. Any discussion?
Tracy, I will abstain from the January 10th, but I'll vote on the other two.
Okay. Any other discussion? I'll start the vote with Mr. Early.
Are we doing all three at one time? He can't
He just
abstain.
abstained. Yep.
Okay. Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. McCrone?
I'll abstain.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
And I vote. Moving on to new business, refunding opportunity presentation, Davenport.
You can. Unless you'd like for me to. That'd be great.
Right. All right. Okay.
It's just an extra. Here's another one in case ain't enough. I'm sorry. Gentlemen, you have in front of you, I hope I got this right, David Rose.
You got it.
With Davenport, and he is going to be here to talk about some possible refunding, some opportunities that we have, and possibly to save some money over the long term with some refinancing opportunities. So, David, if you don't mind.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, members of the board. Again, we've had the good fortune at Davenport of working with your staff for several months now about looking at the county and thinking about, is there some ways to save some money given where interest rates are. So if you look at page 1, we recognize interest rates are at historic lows, although there is some movement upward given what the Federal Reserve wants to do. So basically, very simply, on page 2, you issued a bond back in 2014, went through the Industrial Development Authority, but it's your bond. And the principal outstanding as of the end of the recent fiscal year, June 30th, was slightly over $5.4 million. It has a fixed interest rate at 3.5%, and you're paying about $280,000 per year out until basically 2052, 2053. And you'll see that in a few moments. So one of the good things about this particular issue is that you have the ability to prepay it with any time without penalty. So the question is there some interest rate on opportunity that we can bring that 3.5% down? That's really the goal, as well as if we can bring it down, can we shorten this debt? So think about it doing the exact opposite of what the federal government does, which is they refinance, but they don't shorten anything. They just keep extending debt and rolling it. We're talking about doing the exact opposite. So on page 3 and 4, the interest rate environment, you can see where it goes back to when I started back around 1980. Interest rates were basically upwards of nearly 14%, and today they're hovering around 2%. So again, we are really in a nice environment. And if you take the last several years, on the right-hand side, you could see again, we are at 10-year lows, and those 10-year lows were considerably less than where we were when I started back in 1980, 81, 82 timeframe. So with all of that said, you go to page 4, second here, you could see that another index, taxable index, just different ways of looking at money, that is also hovering in and around the lows. And so we think, again, it's a good time to look at refinancing. And we're going to talk about a way to think about this in a few moments. So page 5 is the actual payments that you're making, and it's set out to 2053. So you'll see there the principal keeps growing every year, the interest comes down every year, and you put the two together, you have the same payments every year of almost $280,000. In talking with staff, one of the things we'd like to concentrate on is if we can get that interest rate down, we'd like to cut out maybe about 8 to 10 years of this loan, just shorten it. Not extend it, but shorten it, and hopefully keep the payments in the early years somewhat close to where they are. They'll go up a little bit, but again, our goal is to remove hundreds of thousands of dollars of unnecessary interest. When you did this loan, by the way, it was a rural development loan out at 40 years. And unfortunately, rural development does not have any refinancing programs to speak of. If they did, we certainly would use them. But I know I'm a new face to y'all, but right up the road, working with these folks here in Wythe County, we've done this now once, and we're about to do it a second time as we do their new school financing you may have read about. So we're doing that right now. We're also going to refinance 4 different rural development loans. Last year, we did upwards of about 7 or 8 different loans. So again, if we can shorten them, you're in good enough financial shape to withstand that. So again, we think that makes sense. So the way to do that on page 6 is what we're going to call a dual track approach. And as your advisor, I'm indifferent to how you do this refinancing. What I mean by that is we are not a bank. We're not competing with the local or regional banks. We're not the state finance entity. What we are basically here to do is to evaluate which one or which of these makes the most sense. And the way we do that is this dual track approach is with your blessing, we would actually put together a formal request of all the banks and brokerages, not just in the area of Southwest Virginia, but literally nationwide. We would do that. We would go out and we'd ask them for a date certain to give us, if they're willing to do this, an absolute locked-in interest rate. The goal would be for the entire period of time. Maybe it's 20 years, maybe it's 22 years, whatever they're willing to do. We would then take a look at that, come back to you and say, this is a locked-in known rate, may or may not be good, we may or may not feel good about it, but then we're going to compare it to the state program called the Virginia Public School Authority. Been around for 50 years. They go to the marketplace typically twice a year, in the spring and in the fall. Our thinking is we would apply for the spring pool, we do it now, and if we like what we get from the banks, we can just say, fine, we're done. If we don't like what we get from the banks, we could stay in that spring pool. The beauty of the spring pool is we meaning you, get to dictate to the state what your level of savings is that you think is acceptable when the pool comes around. So let's say, just for example, no matter what, you want to save $500,000, no matter what, all things being equal. If the pool looks like they're going to save $450,000, then you simply will be pulled out of the pool and it won't cost you anything. That's the approach that we've taken. That's the way it's typically done. But the hope is that we'll have a sense of all that a little bit ahead of time when the pool gets going. And so what we did here is put a schedule together on this page right after 7. Excuse me, page 9, excuse me. So on page 9, what we're showing is that with your blessing, here we are mid-February, we would get your blessing to go forward on a dual track. We would distribute it to the banks in the next couple of weeks. We'd submit the application to VPSA. And then at some point, I would be back in March. If we have good or bad information, just to give you an update, we'd work with staff first and with Steve and his folks to basically say, this is what it looks like. Then, if indeed the bank loan looks good, they recommend that we move towards a closing in April, but we would know what exactly those interest rates are and what the savings are. That's the beauty of that. In the pool, all we could say is it has to be at least X dollars for this board for us to move forward. And so from that perspective, that would happen sometime in May. So either way, we believe that we're going to have an idea with the interest rate environment we're in right now, whether or not this works. If it doesn't work, then simply we can move on till the spring, moves on to the summer into the fall, and we just monitor the interest rates. But we sense that the Federal Reserve, more than sense, we know the Federal Reserve wants to raise rates. Hasn't happened very much yet, but it could happen very quickly. So again, the thought is let's try to strike while the iron's hot. That's really my whole presentation. I think with your blessing, at some point, I'm going to be asked to come back and provide a little overview of some information that we've been putting together on behalf of the staff as it relates to the overall county's finances, school funding and things like that we've been working with Justin and Mike on for now a couple months. So I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Well, just to let you know, this is as it was spoken, a refunding opportunity. It's a good opportunity to do now to shorten the debt. Some places want to leave the debt the same amount of time and just lower your payment, but I've always thought if you can pay it off early, you're better off doing it. So there's no financial commitment at this time. However, if the board would like to move forward with this gives us an opportunity to pair and see if there's actually a savings that will be presented to you and voted on prior.
Do we need to have a motion and a vote to pursue, being that the application needs to be submitted in February?
I think it'd be great.
It would be, and I will probably come back with a formal approval application going through your legal counsel for March. But yes, sir. we
I
can
have
get
a
that.
question.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
What is your fee?
Right now, we're not going to charge anything if we don't get it done. We typically will keep our hours and see how much is involved. And at that point, I'm going to run it by these folks and make sure they're comfortable. And then you have the final say on what we get paid. So we're going to be at risk on this because we've been working from our perspective. Haven't put a lot of time in yet, so we'll just see what happens.
I heard today that the Federal Reserve may raise interest rates 7 times this year. Did you hear that?
No, I didn't hear it 7 times.
Yeah,
I
and are
heard
we a little late? We're behind the power curve on this?
that would be, well, I will say this, unfortunately, if that's what's going to happen, 11 out of the last 12 times they've raised interest rates, a recession has followed. 11 out of 12 times.
Well, I think it'll be 12 out of 13.
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't even imagine that. And by the way, I'm no economist, so
I'm not either.
I don't think they are either. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's our focus. I mean, I mean, I think we have a lot of problems if they're really going to do something 7 times. I just can't imagine that. And I say, who am I? I'm nobody, but just,
Do you need a motion? I move that we move forward.
All right,
With-
I have a
with-
motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, have a motion, second. Any discussion? All right, hearing none, I'll start the vote. Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Early?
Yes.
Mr. Hill? Yes. Mr. McCraw?
Yes.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
And I vote yes.
hopefully
Thank you
we'll
for
be
your
back
time.
Before the first or second of those.
Yeah. You need to get it done
Let
quick.
me say one thing, if I could, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
What we typically see, I'd heard, and what we were following, was they're talking about the first rate increase roughly around March 17th. That's around St. Patrick's Day. They have their meetings and they meet Federal Open Market Committee. What typically happens is the marketplace, in anticipation of that, the general marketplace, rates start to rise. And we've been seeing that particularly in the short end of what we call the yield curve. So out from, you may have seen this over the weekend, the 10-year treasury that we showed you there, that's gone over 2%. That was basically just a few months ago at around 1.5%. So that's moved a 0.5%, if not more, whereas the long end, that hasn't moved very much. So who knows what's going to happen? But we'll continue to monitor it, and like I said, we'll be back on some other things as well. So I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on the agenda, vehicle license fee. Ms. Zimmerman?
Okay, thank you for letting me come speak tonight. Try to go through this pretty quick. I gave you all some sheets. There's 3 things that I'm here for tonight. It's not to ask for money this time either. As you know, the letter that we've had on our website on the COVID-19's impact on vehicles has driven the values for vehicles up. To me, that's not the taxpayer's fault, but that's the way it is. It started in 20, we saw a slight increase, and now we're seeing a larger increase to the tune of approximately 19.5% increase on vehicles. I didn't know this last month because we had not received our values back from NADA, so that's why I did not come last month. I have talked with commissioners across the state. They are looking at a lower tax rate. They are looking at a percentage of value reduction to help the taxpayers with their bills. And the option, there's one more option that we could do, and that's on the vehicle license fees. If for this 1 year, we took the $25 fee away per licensed vehicle, I think that would help the taxpayers with their tax bills. It'd be a one-time thing. The vehicle license fee would come back in 2023, would be on the fall bill for 2023. But for this 1 year, we would do without the vehicle license fee. How you want to bring it back, I would prefer you bring it back to the current year instead of billing a year for the upcoming year for the license fee. But it's however you want to bring it back. I'm okay with it. If you'll look on the first page that I gave you, it's the actual assessed values. That's for 2021. The vehicle license fee was $681,000 revenue that year. We estimate on the next sheet, the vehicle license fee being $685,000 for the 2022. I took the liberty of pulling 25 vehicles out of the system. And I used a vehicle from every board member, from everybody in my office, from everybody in the treasurer's office, and everybody in administration. Of those 25 vehicles, the 2021 values totaled $362,825. This year, the 2022 values for those same 25 vehicles is $450,525. That is a 19.5% increase from last year's values. And I don't think that's a burden the taxpayers can stand. With everybody out of work, everybody losing their jobs because of COVID, nobody wants to work anymore. It's just a burden. These vehicles that I pulled range anywhere from a 2005 model to a 2020 model, so it's not just the newer models. It's all the models. So that is a scenario, 3 scenarios that you can do. Whatever you tell me to do is what I will do. I was just looking for a credit for the taxpayers. And this is not something you need to decide tonight.
And your recommendation is just to drop the vehicle license fee?
That's my recommendation instead of messing with the
Values?
the levies, the values. I don't know what all that would entail to reduce the values. There's a couple of localities that's reducing the values by 25%. With those 25 vehicles, if the value went up that much, just imagine what it's going to do for the whole county.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
thank you very much for coming. And I appreciate your work to help the taxpayers. That's very important.
Thank you.
I'm disappointed that you didn't use my 1980 J20 pickup.
I can't tell you what vehicle I use, but I do.
I don't know. I don't have very many of
everybody.
that new. But I think people notice a tax rate change. I'm not so sure that they'll notice a $25 sticker fee because that's kind of expected and, you know, it's always there, but they will definitely notice a tax rate decrease. I know it's probably more work for you, but if you want people to actually appreciate what you're doing for them, I think that would be better appreciated.
Right, and that's what I'll implement if that's what you choose to do. It's totally up to the board.
Are there any other questions?
Okay, I have
All right.
another issue.
I have one more question. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
That's okay.
How hard would it be for you to tell us what the rate would be if we had done a 20%? If we was to reduce the personal property tax rate 20%, how hard would that be to calculate into this total personal property savings?
Well, it'd be 20% less than the current rate, right?
That's what I mean, that's what
Yeah.
that's what it would be, right?
That's one way of looking, yeah,
Okay.
that's one way you could do it.
Current rate is what?
230,
230 per 100.
so that'd make it 270, 174 basically, 184 basically. If we
Yep.
did the 20%, yeah.
It's been a long day and I don't have my calculator. I'm gonna press my brain.
I do have one, so if we did do a discount, would it just be for a year until?
Yes.
Okay.
We're
'Cause
not
I'm
sure
talking to a
about
lot
the
of the car
values
dealers.
that
I was in the
they're-
car business for a long time, and they think it's gonna level out, and,
I hope so.
cause the new cars are starting to get sold now, coming out, and so they think there's gonna be a leveling out, and a lot of the value's gonna crash, so that would just be my concern going forward.
Right.
Okay.
A rate change, if that's what you want to do, that's great.
When when do you and your staff need that information by, to help? Yesterday?
Well, no, yesterday's when we needed the real estate tax rate, but personal property, we need, no later than July for us to get the books finished.
I like Mr. Early's thoughts on it, you know, if you just do it vehicle license fee, it's gonna be the same across the board, but how do you equate, 2005 vehicle versus a 2020, you know, so.
Also, that was another topic I was going to bring up is the real estate tax rate. I probably need to advertise to set the rate next month in March for us to get the first half billing ready. Last year, we went into May doing it, and it really put undue stress on our office and the treasurer's office. Because the first half tickets is due June 22nd, I believe. June 22nd, 23rd. And we need to give the taxpayers ample time to see their tax bill and pay it instead of just 2 weeks. Okay, the third thing that I have is to the real estate tax relief. I would like to see increases in the income limit and the net worth limit. With Social Security raises being at 5.9% this year, that is going to take away several of our people that is in this program because the raise is going to put them just a little bit over the 30,000 income limit that we have. I would like for you to consider, and this won't be for this year, this will be for next year, because the raises just went into effect this year, and that will be their income base for next year's exemption. I'd like to see the income raised from 30,000 to 40,000, and the net worth from 100,000 to 150,000. I estimate picking up possibly 10 to 20 more people. It's not going to be a lot with the increases. And it will allow some that's already in it to retain it.
You said raise 30 to 40, and what was the amount, the other amount?
The net worth limit from 100,000 to 150,000.
And that'll pretty much just take care of the ones that's going to be out of it based on the 5.9% increase in their salary, right?
I'm sorry?
And that'll just take care of most of the ones that's going to be, let's get the 5.9% raise and.
Yes, that'll take care of those.
Okay.
And we may pick up, like I said, 10 to 15, maybe 20 more people.
I'm sorry, tell me again, it exempts them from what?
They get a $250 credit on their real estate taxes.
Oh, okay.
But they have to meet certain qualifications. There's a cap of income limit of 30,000.
And
I'd
net
like to
worth?
see that raised to 40. And the net worth is 100,000. I'd like to see it raised to 150.
Okay.
Any other questions? Yes. It would just be amending the ordinance we already have. And that would not affect the veterans' exemptions at all because it's not income-based. Okay. Y'all have a good night.
Thank you.
Okay.
Next on the agenda, the Solid Waste Authority update, Sam Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman Moore. Good evening,
Good evening, sir.
new board. Good to see you. Got 3 new members. You may not know this, but the solid waste, you have 3 members Grayson has 3 members, Galax has 3 members. I'm one of them, Rex is the other one, and matter of fact, he is the vice chair of the solid waste, and Mike is the other one. So, I got all good news for you. This is a great thing. I appreciate you letting me serve on the board. Guessing that it's about time for me to move on, so I'll probably be resigning here shortly, but I don't think you have any problem getting somebody else to go. The Carroll, Grayson, and Galax Solid Waste was started in 1993 with these 3 localities. It's been a big success, and we've used it all over the state as a way for communities to work together regionally to get good things done. They've used us as an example. We're in the process of closing a sale now, and the first thing people's going to ask you is, how long is that solid waste, how long is that dump going to be there? Any of you have any idea?
30 years.
40. Sir, I'm sorry, I should have waited. Yeah, it's good for at least 40 more years, and then we'll be moving to Grayson County, and that's just a projection. We're closing a sale now, which will be used for probably the next 3 years, and it's at a cost of well over $2 million, and I'll tell you that in just a minute. But everything that solid waste does, we pay for in advance. I know Mr. Davenport's trying to help you get rid of some of your debt. With solid waste, we try not to have any debt. We're controlled mainly by the Department of Environmental Quality, commonly the acronym DEQ. They oversee everything. You don't just dump all your trash somewhere and then go away and leave it. You got to cover it up. They got certain regulations, and they check you and they fine you, and you're going to do it right or it won't be done. We can be shut down. There's a lot of good things that we've done over there. We've had a minimal price increase since the beginning in 1993. The tipping fee has increased $12 per ton in 29 years. 29 years ago, it was $43 per ton. Now it's $55. The current rate for household trash, if the citizens bring it in, 90 gallons or less, $4. For more than 90 gallons, $8. And of course, we offer, they can sign up for trash pickup for waste industries at a very reasonable price, I think. Being a senior, mine is $47 for every 3 months, which sounds like a great bargain. If you add that for a year, it's about $218. All right. Grayson, actually it's $188, I'm sorry. Grayson decided that they had to start charging for their trash. Everybody want to know, why does Carroll have to pay for trash and Grayson don't? They were paying for it all the time. It just wasn't listed out as trash. Well, now they list it out, and they charge them $280, $218 per year, which is a little bit more than what we have to pay. That's about $30 more a year than if you sign up and let waste industry do it. And waste industry puts you a nice black trash can with a green lid on it, picks it up, don't scatter it all over the road. If you've been by some areas close to us, you'll see the green boxes. That's the way they do it. Other places, they'll set out their household trash in plastic bags, and the dogs are waiting. Birds like to pick up. So, you know, this works good for us, I think, but you're going to be asking, I know people's going to say, well, why don't Carroll go ahead and just pick up their own trash? And you'll be looking at it, I'm sure you will, but take it into consideration what's good and what's bad. DEQ also requires a minimum of 15% recycle. All right, we recycle 29%, so we're way ahead on the game on that. And if you want to help get in that, if you go to the solid waste area, go up to the dump. When you first go in the gate, right to the left, there's boxes for plastic, cardboard, or whatever, so you can help in that process. We keep our rates down low because we keep late model, low hire equipment. It prevents downtime and saves money on repairs. We add features to increase the life of the landfill. Landfill, you increase your life by compacting it. The more you can compact the trash, the more you can get in that sale. So it saves money. We found out that the machine we were using that rolls over it and compacts it, we bought bigger twines that hit it and compacts it better. So we've really increased the life of the sale by doing this. We try to stay on top of everything. We've looked at every way to save money. We knew we were going to be there for 40 more years, so we built a new business office. And I don't know whether any of you have been up there or not. I hope you have. If you haven't, go up there and look at it. It's a very nice structure. It's right on the right when you go up to the landfill. When that project was built, you know how much money we borrowed? Zero. Exactly. We didn't have to borrow a penny. So, you know, and it's a nice place, and it'll be used for something, I guess, when we leave out of there. Most of us won't be there. The solid waste also has been sponsoring 2 household hazardous waste and paper shredding events per year for all the citizens in the 3 localities at no cost. You can bring it over there. I had a pesticide applicator's license, and you have to have those. Some of you that grow things and use this different stuff to spray, some of it is very deadly. And if you're not trained in it, they won't sell it to you. You've got to have that license to get it. All right? Works good. Use 3/4 of the bottle, you got this much left. What are you going to do with it? Maybe you go out of business. I grew Christmas trees for probably 30 years, but I finally quit. And so did other people in the county. Some of the people would try to pass that on to somebody else to use. Some of it just stays in the building, and sooner or later it becomes a problem. They can bring that now with no charge and get rid of it. So your grandchildren don't have to wonder if they go swimming or go in the creek looking for crawdads, what are they going to be getting into? It's not going to be there. We gladly take it up. We purchased 34 acres of adjacent property, the side of the landfill. Not that we need it for the sales, but we did need it for different things around the landfill. You always need different dirt and stuff. We purchased a new tire wood shredder, and this shredder has saved the authority $121,000, which has been paid to the contractors. The machine is going to pay for itself in approximately 2.5 years. So you can see we're taking care of your business as we go along. When the landfill each day they close, they have to cover all this that's been laid there. All right, we bought a tarp covering, and we had to happen to have the big enough machine to spread that tarp out. Every day at the end of the day, we cover that tarp and cover all that new trash that's been put in there. We used to cover it with wood chips, tire chips, and dirt. And you know, it just stayed there. You didn't take it off the next day. Tarp comes off, so we've saved that much space. It's well worth what it is. We do it for, and then you say, well, why did you buy the tire shredder and wood shredder? Well, we bought that because around the edges of the tarp, you still have trash and you have to cover that. So that's what we use the tires for. So we cover that. All right, the sale construction I was telling you about cost us $2,300,000, and it's 90% complete. Sowers is about to finish up, but all of us know we're having problems getting certain things, right? Guess what? We are too. We got the money, but we can't buy it. So we're on a hold for about a month till we get it. And this sale is about 4.6 acres. It has a life expectancy of 4.5 years. When we get this one and use it up, we're going to build 3 more in that order. So we're prepared at least 40 years, maybe longer, but we've got at least 40 years. Now, I know you're looking at one waste place in Cana. All right, we had a auxiliary one there, and I was on the board when we passed that. It was set as a trial example to see if that was gonna work, because a lot of our people was having to drive a long way. Some of them didn't want to drive a long way, so they throw it over the bank before they got there. So we had these convenience centers. You'll probably be looking at that, and I think you've got something on the agenda today that you'll be talking about it more. But that's gonna come up in the future. A lot of people's gonna come and tell you, you need those green boxes. Get some of them green boxes and scatter them around Carroll County. When they come to us and ask us that, we usually ask them, how much land have you got that you're gonna allow us to put those boxes on? And they usually say, well, I don't really have any land that you can put those boxes on, but we need them. Well, if we'd be glad to put them out. So anyway, that's not the right thing. We have 8 full-time employees, 1 temporary part-time. We're doing a study now to make sure that we're paying them fair so that we don't lose them. Machine operators, hard to come by. My guess, we're paying them what they would probably make if they went somewhere else, but then they've got that drive and all this kind of stuff too. So hopefully we're going to be able to keep them. The manager, director is Alan Lawson. He is a manager. He extends an invitation to anyone who would like to tour the landfill to contact him or just come by and set up a time. He would love to show you that. Kimberly Bunn is the secretary there. She's a jewel, so you'll enjoy talking to her. Drop by and see what it looks like. Do you have any questions?
Question?
Mr. Chairman, Sam, thank you for coming and all the work you've done with the regional landfill. Thank you.
I thank you. I've enjoyed it. I've learned a lot. I mean, matter of fact, went to Myrtle Beach where granddaughter lives, and one of the days, vacation days, I went to convenience sites at Myrtle Beach. Horry County has a lot of trash.
I've got a couple of observations. I'll just throw them all out. You can respond or not if you'd like to.
Okay.
Glass. You no longer take that in recycling. You haven't for some time. It kills me to throw glass away. I recycle at my house, and every bit of glass goes in the trash.
Yeah, well, there is some problems, and you've probably heard this story too. Some of the stuff we were collecting to recycle, we had no way to get rid of it. No one was buying it anymore. And at the end of the day, when it would get full, a lot of times that would end up in the dump anyway.
Well, speaking of
And
that,
that's not a good thing, but that's the way the economy was working.
that's a good lead into my next point, which is
Okay.
plastic. You know, you have a certain number of containers, and when one sits over at trick call too long and you don't have a container to replace it with, you take the plastic to the dump. I've been there when they brought that container back. I said, where have you been? Well, I just had to dump it because we don't have another container. I'm going a lot of time and effort to separate my plastic, and it's going to the dump.
Oh,
Can you get another container?
we'll talk about that. I'll bring that up next meeting. Remind me, Michael.
Plastic bags.
Okay.
That little trash can with a slot about like that, stuffing plastic bags in. Can you come up with something better? You know what I'm talking about? Plastic bags,
Okay.
Walmart bags.
Yeah, oh, okay.
There's a, I don't know, 50-gallon trash can there with a little slot in it that you have to cram bags through. It's frequently full. Ought to be some better way to collect
So
it.
in other words, we need to pay a little more attention to what we're doing.
I know, you need
Part
some
of
other way to
recycling.
collect it. I mean,
Oh,
it's
yeah,
just a
I
real.
agree. Yeah, we ask you to do that and take your time to do it, and then we're not taking good care of it.
And I really appreciate your efforts to prolong the life of the landfill, but don't you think 80 years with a landfill in the middle of town is long enough? It's time for somebody else to take that.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's what, see, the original agreement, it was supposed to go to Grayson, and they way underestimated the number of years we were gonna keep it.
Yeah, we seem to get the short end of the stick on that occasionally.
Yeah.
So,
But we have tried to improve, the plastic bags blowing all over the people's property and stuff. We have a person even goes around and gathers up a lot of that stuff
Yeah.
each day. We try to do the best we can.
Well, I know.
At the best, it is a landfill.
Yeah, and it's been, gonna
And
be there.
nobody wants one.
Yeah, but 80 years, that's more than our fair share.
Oh, yeah. But do we close up what we've got
No,
now? Or-
I just don't know that you go buy more land to put more cells in.
Oh, well, that 34 acres we bought will not be in a landfill.
Well, I know that, but you still did buy land and create additional cells years back.
Oh, yeah.
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 That's it. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions?
Anything else?
Nope.
Thank you, Sam, for coming.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
you.
I'm sorry I took longer than I thought.
Oh, you did.
Congratulations on your Woodlawn apartments from the school. I think that's a great idea. I'm sure you got some people, naysayers, that says dumb idea.
Thank you, sir. Next on the agenda, 911 update, Jolene Young.
I will make this quick for you guys, but I hadn't been here in a while, and I know there's some new people, so I wanted to come and give a little bit of an update. The Twin County 911 Regional Commission was first established in 1989, so it, like the landfill, has been a long, lasting and successful regional venture. And it's changed in that 30-some years. In 2021, we answered 22,385 911 calls in the center. From those calls, we made 46,628 dispatches. We also manage addressing. Last year, we assigned 260 new addresses across the regional commission. Of that, 176 of those were in Carroll County, or about 68%. So one of the things I wanted to talk to you about tonight is some of the legislative changes. There is a lot going on in 911. We seem to be very popular with the legislators these days. This year, the legislation required that we have telephone CPR enabled in all of the 911 PSAPs throughout the state. So that just means a dispatcher can talk a caller through CPR, and there's training that goes along behind that. We are compliant with that, and have been since 2016. We also they've also passed legislation at a national level requiring a new 988 number. And in Virginia, they passed a mental health bill requiring a Marcus alert response, which we are still working through. And for July 1st, 2022, we have to have protocols in place that determine when we keep a call and dispatch it and when we pass it off to that 988 and vice versa. So we're working with Mount Rogers Mental Health to define that. And then there will be other changes over the next few years that involve law enforcement. The big change for 911 is the transition to next generation 911 EZNet, which is the emergency services internet. It's basically a wide area network. Historically, telephone companies have managed the routing of the 911 calls. That's changing. Now that will be handled through this statewide emergency services network. So we're required to be on that next generation technology by 2023. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that because it is significant for us and of course has a cost, which is not being fully funded by the state. There's also legislation requiring all the public safety answering points to be emergency medical dispatch enabled by 2024. So that means on medical, we would be able to give medical instructions not only for CPR, but other medical emergencies. and that we can distinguish between a advanced life support emergency and a basic life support, a basic support call incident. And again, we are compliant with that. We implemented emergency medical dispatch in 2016, and we have delivered 2 babies in that time and performed CPR or walked callers through CPR multiple times. And of course, like everyone else, we are balancing the minimum wage changes and staff retention issues. So on the next generation 911, currently in Virginia, there's 9 different networks. If Patrick County takes a call that should have been routed to Twin County, they have to pass that through an admin line, and I do not get any of the emergency information because they're on one CenturyLink network, I'm on another. So when we move to this new internet protocol-based technology, I'll be able to transfer to any center in Virginia. Also, the technology that we're operating on, the data that we get for an emergency call is basically sent through a dial-up modem. So, and it's very limited. We can get 158 characters. So the new technology will allow us to receive a lot more data about emergency calls. And that's the reason that Virginia put the legislation in place requiring the change. From a deployment schedule, there are agencies. They've started on the East Coast and they're moving to the West. So there's about 20 or more centers right now that have moved to this new technology. The good thing is they're working the kinks out before they get to us. So we are in the blue, and we're slated to go live in 2023, and we are have started actively working on the projects. There were 2 competitive bids to go out and find the vendor who was going to do this EZNet. Fairfax went out and did a bid, and then Virginia Beach did their own bid, and they both selected AT&T. So most of the agencies in Virginia are riding off of those contracts and that pricing. It's a very technical procurement. It's a very technical purchase. So we locally in the state didn't feel like that we could enhance on the work that was done by the 2 independent agencies. Part of our upgrade will involve new equipment. We are supposed to refresh equipment every 5 years, and the state gives us a grant that covers most of that. Right now, we are looking at, we may have an increase of $1,000 to $1,500 a month for that equipment. However, we're still negotiating with the vendors and trying to get that down to close to the grant funds, so we have very limited out-of-pocket from a locality for that equipment. And the other significant task is we're working on the GIS data. So one of the first things we have to do to be able to join the EZNet is we have to have edge-matched maps with all of the surrounding jurisdictions, including the state of North Carolina and the edge of Tennessee for Grayson County. So we have worked through that. We've got our map data in the acceptance stage. So hopefully within the next month or so, we'll get total approval on that. And that will be a major milestone behind us. As I said, this is more costly. Currently, we pay about $37.50 a month for the 911 connectivity. That's the 911 trunks that brings the call into the center. And also, that's data management, where the telephone company manages a database that determines where the call's routed. CenturyLink based that on landline subscribers. The new norm is to base it upon population, and that's part of the reason ours is increasing so dramatically. Some of the Verizon customers saw a very small change, and some even saw a decrease in what their cost. Ours is doubling. The state is going to pay that for 2 years. So we will begin seeing that increase in 2026. And so every budget submission I make, I include what it means for Carroll, so that we keep that at the forefront, that we're going to have a $28,000 increase in 2026. So that's pretty much the major project where we're transitioning. It's a major transition in technology for 911. I also wanted to just highlight to you some of the standards that we hold our staff accountable to. There's 2 boards. One's the National Emergency Number Association. The other one is the APCO, Association of Public Communication Officials. So we monitor those, and we try to stay in step with what those national standards are. So per the standards, you should always have at least 2 communication officers per shift. 2 is our minimum. We typically work with 3. We should answer the 911 call in 10 seconds 90% of the time. We're doing that at least 98 to 99% of the time. We dispatch EMS and law calls within 2 minutes of answering the phone. So we have 2 minutes to find out name, callback number, location, their name, callback number, and then what's going on, and get that dispatched. And we do that the majority of the time. There's always instances where you can't get them to give you an address, and it's not pinging, but a large percentage of the time we are getting those calls out in under 2 minutes. I think on average we get it out within a minute. We also we dispatch fire calls within 60 seconds. We follow the National Fire Prevention Association standard for that. And they require that 90% of the time, and then 90 seconds 99% of the time. So as we're doing quality assurance, which is the next standard, that's some of what we're looking for to ensure that the dispatcher is getting those calls out quickly. We perform quality assurance on 7 to 10% of our incidents to ensure that we're following these standards and other practices. Just a couple of other projects. The commission has agreed for me to participate on the regional radio task force. So I'm working with the sheriffs and the emergency managers on trying to improve the communication infrastructure, which you all have heard a lot about, and is a very costly project. And I'm just one of 9 participants on that task force. The other thing besides addressing that we manage is putting up signs. A program we started about 5 years ago is we actually have matrices that we go around the county and check the sign health. COVID and then short staffing related to COVID and just the ability to hire people has set us back the last 2 years. But we are beginning to drive areas and look at the signs. And so typically spring is a good time to do that after all the snow plows have been through, because they're deadly on those signs, them and teenagers. So that's pretty much what is, at a high level, what's happening in 911. And I'll see what questions you gentlemen may have.
Anybody have any questions? That means you've done a good job.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, for your continued support.
Thank you. All right, moving on the agenda, the consent calendar. Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar? All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, have a motion and a second. Are there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll start the voting with Mr. McCarroll. Yes. Mr. Dixon.
Yes.
Mr. Hill.
Yes.
Mr. Collins.
Yes.
Mr. Early.
Yes.
And I vote yes. And next, the financial management policy. Is that something you'd speak to us on, Mr. Watson?
Sure. In front of you, you have a copy of the financial management policy. We've went over this. Actually, we've worked with Davenport in order to put together a policy that will protect the county in the long-term future. It sets up reserve and fund balance requirements, also a capital improvement plan. The goal behind this is to set up how our money is, how the funds in the different areas are taken care of so that there's better reporting to the board. And the board will have a checklist at the end of the year to make sure that we are following these policies. And it sets up the need that if there is a sizable fund balance change, that a plan to go back, to get back to our policy and our ability to be a stable community. It'll also, it's a step to be, I believe it'll help us become a double bond rated also. So it includes our capital improvement plan and other general policies that you need. Is there any questions? I can.
All right. Do I have a motion to approve the financial management policy?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion, we accept the financial management policy.
All right. Have a motion. Do I have a second? All right. All right.
This has the effective law since we already had the public hearing on this. Does this have, in fact, does it go into code, county code, since we already had the public hearing? So we have to go.
I don't believe it was prepared as an ordinance, but it is going to be adopting the official policy of the county.
Okay. Are there any other discussion? I'll start the vote. Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
Mr. McCraw?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Early?
Yes.
And I vote yes. All right. Next, the PPEA policy.
In your package, you've got a copy of the public-private partnership. What we are doing is need to adopt these set of guidelines into our, as a policy for the county. One of the reasons why is in order to be able to form a public-private partnership, you have to have these adopted. And an example would be is if we send out an RFP for, say, a company to provide broadband to Carroll County, that gives us the opportunity to work with them to provide those services in a partnership. So what you're finding more often is, we can apply for grants in order to work with a private company. So these need to be adopted in order for us to be able to do that.
Do I hear a motion to adopt this?
I make the motion, we adopt the PPEA policy.
All right. Have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. With a second. Are there any discussion or questions? Hearing none, I'll start the vote with Mr. Hill.
Yes.
Mr. McCall,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mr. Early,
Yes.
Mr. Dixon,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Next, the request from the thrift store.
Okay, we received a request from Hillsville Pentecostal Holiness Church. They have recently purchased a piece of property and are operating a thrift store in order to support different community functions that they participate in. The money does go back into the community. However, I'm going to let, it's not as easy as it seems, so I'm going to let Steve discuss this.
I think this is one that's probably going to qualify, but they've not submitted all the information that would be necessary either to recommend that the board adopt a resolution or an ordinance, or for the Commissioner of Revenue to independently make a judgment, because there's really 3 tracks you can pursue. There's the adoption of a resolution, adoption of an ordinance, or if enough information is given to the commissioner to allow her to independently make that determination, she could make the determination as well. But what I would like to see from the church is just something in writing saying we're formally requesting exemption status for this property, clarifying that are they operating as a 501c3 thrift store, or is it just the church itself is operating this facility? If there's any sort of different entity, we'd want to know that. We'd want confirmation in writing that all funds will be used solely for religious, charitable, or educational purposes, and a brief description of what that purpose is. And they're getting pretty close with their letter, but I think we want a little more detail with that. And then the 4th point, I think they do describe, and that's what their operations actually consist of, and that's the operation of a thrift store. But with that written response, I think that the county would be in a position to take action on it,
Okay.
either through the Board of Supervisors or the Commissioner.
Okay. So we'll table it for another month and maybe see if, Mike, if you could reach out to them and
Absolutely.
get that information. Okay. Next on the agenda is the water and sewer. You want to speak on that, or?
Absolutely. We've had a really successful time with the water sewer extension grants, with partnering with the EDA. In the past, we have allocated $100,000 of funds from the American Recovery Act in order to support water sewer extensions. What this does is provides people in Carroll County help and assistance through the EDA as applied for a grant to help with water sewer connections. We currently have, I think, 38 applications, which have 46 requested connections. That, if they're all approved, would equal $138,000 worth of grants received so far. So what I am requesting is to use an additional $100,000 to support this program and allow the EDA to continue with this water sewer grant.
All right. Could I get a motion to approve this additional funding for the grant process?
I'll make that motion.
All right, I have that motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Are there any discussion or questions? Hearing none, I'll start the vote. Mr. Early,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mr. McCraw,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. Dixon,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Next, the Piper's Gap Rescue Squad donation request.
We received a request from Piper Gas Rescue Squad. They have recently taken one of their vehicles and traded it for equal value. However, in order to do this truck for the best of the county, they're wanting to outfit it in order to do first response. What this will do is to give the opportunity so that if they don't have a ambulance on, or if there is a need to bring an ambulance from another area, they can provide first responder. So in other words, they can go, they can start CPR, start doing medical procedures and helping without, before the ambulance gets there. So it's a life-saving piece of equipment. They have requested a donation of $50,000 in order to refurbish the truck and make it road-ready to do this. We currently have allotted money to be spent for, was appropriated for the, to help Piper's Gap and employees and to assist in hiring. However, that money can be transferred over, and the additional 25,000 can be come from other funds. If it's the board's wish, we could allocate the $50,000 and do an amendment to the budget.
Do I have a motion to approve this?
I so move.
All right, have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, are there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll start the vote. Mr. Early,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. McGraw,
Yes.
Mr. Dixon,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Moving on to the agenda, the appropriation for grant requests.
In your package, you have all the nonprofit organization grant requests that we've received so far. If you've had the opportunity to look through them or have any information you'd like for us to gather, I'd be more than happy going back to these organizations. Many of them placed financial statements in here. It's not something we have to appropriate today, but if the board sees fit to appropriate any of the requests, I guess that's what I'm asking for. If we'd like to look at them, Father, or if there's one that you feel like it needs to be appropriated at this time.
How much do we have left in the 23,000?
And how much these add up to?
Is there a motion from the board to take action right now, or do you want to table it till next month, more time to review?
I'd like to have more time.
Okay,
You need that form of motion.
not necessarily. No.
I'd like to make a motion, we approve them.
All right, have a motion to approve them. Do I have a second?
If we approve them the way they're requested, then it's going to go over budget, correct? How could we work it out? Justin, do a percentage and get everybody covered?
You want to make your motion to that effect within the guidelines of what's in the budget? Direct Justin to do that?
Okay.
All right, I have that motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right. Are there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll start the vote with Mr. McCraw,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. Dixon,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mr. Early,
Yes.
and I vote yes. All right, under old business, advertising for public hearing for redistricting.
Over the past year, we've had a discussion about the redistricting in Carroll County. Currently, we have 17 districts, voting precincts, and I think with the change and the recommendation from with the changes in the state when they went through the redistricting process, it means we'll drop from 17 till 16, based on the way they move the lines. This would require a public hearing, and also looking at changing the polling place from Woodlawn School to Oakland.
To senior citizen bill.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's right.
Senior citizen, yeah.
To the senior citizen. I don't know what I was. But from Woodlawn School to the senior center. But that would require a public hearing. I would request the board to move forward with allowing us to advertise and working with the registrar in order to move forward with this process.
All right. Entertain a motion for, move on with the public hearing to advertise.
I'll make that motion.
All right, have a motion, to have a second?
Second.
All right, motion and second, with any discussion? Hearing none, I'll start the vote with Mr. Early,
Yes?
Mr. Collins? Yes. Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mr. McCraw?
Yes.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Next, under old business, the RFP results from the County Convenience Center.
Mr. Chairman, I think I can address that one.
Okay. Thank you.
What you have before you is the proposal from the RFP process that the county put out. You do have a response here with designated hours for staffing the convenience center and some terms. And this is the sort of the skeleton of an agreement. It's not in a form that could be adopted by the board today, but if the board is inclined to move forward with the prospect of reopening the convenience site, you could adopt a motion directing staff to prepare an agreement with the proposer and the county for the board's approval at the next meeting.
Okay. I entertain a motion for administering staff to prepare something for the next meeting for review.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
All right, I have a motion, to have a second?
Second.
All right, motion and second. With any discussion? Hearing none, I'll start the vote with Mr. Early,
Yes?
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. McCraw,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mr. Dixon,
Yes.
and I vote yes. All right, at this time, board member comments. I'll start with Mr. Collins.
Can I ask a question first? Do we have a statement that we're going to read?
Yes. Yes.
Maybe be more appropriate now?
Okay, we could do that now. I asked that
Sorry.
Mr. Durbin, if you would address the board with a resolution for our approval.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to. The board has asked to look into what could be done to reconsider the process or have a more full and collaborative process for the redevelopment of the Southwestern Virginia Training Center site. As the board's aware, as the public's aware, the sale of the property seems to keep getting delayed. I've made a FOIA request for any documents pertaining to that extension, because if it's the case that there's not a binding extension of the buyer's due diligence period, it may be possible that although a sale may go forward, it may be that the Commonwealth would not be obligated to move forward with the proposed sale. That's something that will be borne out in our records request. But the Board of Supervisors was interested in exploring if the sale can be paused or declined altogether, what other alternative opportunities there might be to engage in a planned process for redevelopment of that property. To that end, the board has directed a resolution be prepared. And with your permission, Mr. Chairman, I can read that for the board's consideration.
Yes, sir, if you would, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a resolution of the Carroll County Board of Supervisors regarding the disposition of the Southwest Virginia Training Center. Whereas on July 12th, 2022, the Carroll County Board of Supervisors, July 12th, 2021, the Carroll County Board of Supervisors adopted a resolution attached hereto requesting conveyance from the Commonwealth of Virginia to the County of Carroll, the real property and improvements located thereon, which formerly constituted the Southwestern Virginia Training Center property, herein the property. And whereas it is the position of the board that the property could be used for a number of local and/or regional initiatives to improve health, create jobs, improve education, grow the local economy, and promote the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of Carroll County and Southwestern Virginia. And whereas the board is aware of a certain contract between the Commonwealth of Virginia, Department of General Services, and a third party for the sale of the property, which contains a restriction requiring the property to be used for healthcare purposes for a period of 5 years. And whereas it appears that the study period for the purchaser to evaluate the property prior to closing on the purchase has passed, with no sale having occurred within the timelines set forth in the aforesaid contract. And whereas, as provided in the aforementioned real estate sale contract, final approval of the sale of property is subject to a number of contingencies, including the approval of the Governor of Virginia and the Attorney General of Virginia. And whereas the board is aware of Chapter 610 of the 2019 Virginia Acts of Assembly, which provided that the property should only be disposed of after a planning process between the Commonwealth, local representatives, including those of the County of Carroll, the County of Grayson, the City of Galax, and the Blue Ridge Crossroads Economic Development Authority. And whereas before the expiration of the period in which such planning process was to occur, the property was authorized to be sold without input of local representatives pursuant to Chapter 1289 of the 2020 Virginia Acts of General Assembly. And whereas the board is concerned that in bypassing the time frames and process set out in the 2019 Acts of Assembly, citizens of Carroll County and the region did not have a sufficient opportunity to plan and implement a redevelopment process for the property. And whereas the board is aware of efforts made by the Commonwealth with regard to the former Central Virginia Training Center to redevelop the facility for the benefit of the local community, including efforts in the General Assembly to satisfy outstanding indebtedness with regard to the facility, and the provision of Go Virginia grant funds to enable a study to be performed to formulate a redevelopment plan. And whereas the board is interested in exploring a similar process for the redevelopment of the property, and is of the opinion that the current proposed sale of property should not move forward so that a considered process of community engagement may be undertaken and the property redeveloped in a way that most benefits the citizens of Carroll County and the region. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Board of Supervisors of the County of Carroll, Virginia, that the Governor of Virginia and the Attorney General of Virginia are hereby requested to decline approval of the proposed sale of the Southwestern Virginia Training Center property, and that the aforesaid property be made available to the County of Carroll and/or an economic development authority or industrial facility authority serving the County of Carroll for redevelopment in accordance with the best interests of local citizens. And be it further resolved that the county staff are directed to provide a copy of this resolution and a letter to the Governor of Virginia, the Attorney General of Virginia, and each member of the General Assembly of Virginia representing Carroll County and Southwestern Virginia. Adopted this the 14th day of February 2022 by the Board of Supervisors in the County of Carroll, Virginia.
I entertain a motion to accept this resolution.
So move.
Everybody.
I think we talked about possibly having it sent next day, tomorrow, correct? As early as can?
That's as soon as possible.
All right.
I'll second.
All right, I got a second. No discussion. I'll start the voting with Mr. McCraw.
Yes.
Mr. Dixon,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mr. Early,
Yes.
and I vote yes.
And when's the earliest you can get it out? The question I do have. When you think it'll be?
Well, if it's printed and signed this evening, it could go out in overnight mail tomorrow.
Great.
All right. Now moving on to board member comments. I'll start with Mr. Collins.
All right, just a few things. The last meeting, I appreciate that we're seeing some movement and seeing some things get done. Several things that I asked for in the last meeting. One was to look at opening back up the convenience center in Cana. We have before us a company who has offered to basically open that back up at no cost to the county. So I certainly hope after we get our I's dotted and our T's crossed, we can get that passed next month. I asked for a narrative budget, and county administrator has produced a very nice one. I don't know when we're going to see that, Mike, publicly, but it looked great, and I appreciate your.
We can share it at any time, and our finance director there did an excellent job.
Credit. But it looked very nice, Justin. Thank you for that. But thank you, Mike, for moving on that. Asked for a clearinghouse on jobs available where we could share them with the public easily. We got that just pretty quickly after the last meeting. Asked for a sit down with the folks between Acadia Health and ourselves, Board of Supervisors. We've had that. In light of what else has happened, though, I'm not going to say a whole lot about that. On February 2nd and 3rd, myself, Supervisor Joey Dixon, and County Administrator Mike Watson all went to Rural Caucus in Richmond, and we spent time with our state representatives there, and we asked for help, and they were more than willing to help give us some guidance, and that's where some of this stuff has come from tonight. So it was a very productive 2 days in Richmond. Just glad to see things moving forward.
Mr. Hill?
I don't have anything other than thank everybody for coming and presentations that you gave.
Mr. McCall?
I just really would like to thank Mike and the rest of the staff and Justin for the job that they're doing in providing us the financial statements that they are, and just it looks good to look at these financial numbers and see where we're at right now. And that means a lot for the people of this county. And just thank everybody for being here tonight.
Mr. Early?
I want to start out by thanking the citizens that show up here every month to tell us what's important to them, because without that input, a lot of things that we've done here in the past 2 months probably would not have gotten done. So thank you for doing that. I'd also like to thank Mike Watson for removing the cages that had us hemmed up here on the board. I appreciate that. I didn't think they were necessary, and I mentioned it last month, and they're gone. Thank you. And finally, I served on this board 15, 20 years ago, and I resigned from the PSA board because I felt like we needed citizens' input to the PSA board as opposed to all supervisors. I would ask that we consider that again. Perhaps Mike can help us maybe advertise for citizens that are interested in serving on that board. And if we can find folks that are interested, then I think it might serve us well to have our current board members that are on that PSA board to resign and appoint other members at the discretion of this board. So just please consider that. Otherwise, I don't have anything else. Thank you, Mike, and all your staff for all you're doing.
Mr. Dixon?
Just want to thank everyone for coming out. Mike, thank you all for what you do. Tracy, coming. I know you're not feeling good, so we appreciate you coming on in. We'd like to see that next month. I know we've got a lot going on, and we're making progress. Seems like we're getting some things going, and that's great. But we do need to interview for the committee appointments. We've got several openings on the planning commission and different ones. I'd like to just make sure we get that on the done. So, other than that, that's all I have.
And I'd like to ditto about what everybody else has said. I'll thank everybody for coming out, and Mr. Dixon for your years of service to the community, not only at the landfill, but on the board and in the school system. Thank you for that. And it's always good to see a familiar face that running you around whenever you was in high school. But I would like to also extend a thank you to everybody that's reached out in the last couple of weeks since I've had some health issues, and it's meant a lot. It's sort of a testament of why I always have and always will feel that Carroll County is a great place to live, and I come home from the hospital, and I see text from board members. Sometimes you don't have to take out your time to do that, but it was it was great to get the encouragement from the churches in the community, from the town council, mayor, the county employees. It's makes you feel good, and it's a lot of the reason you come like tonight. You're here to represent the people of the county, and you feel like you have to do that at times. So, but I would still continue your prayers, and let's all join up and lift Crystal up too. It's sad not to have her here. We need to keep her in our thoughts and prayers, and maybe Mike reach out if she needs anything from the board. We'd be more than happy to help whatever we could. And that being said, I guess we'll turn it over to the county administrator's comments.
I don't have anything this evening.
All right.
Just thank you for everything y'all do.
All right, and county attorney?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think you've heard all my comments this evening, so thank you all.
All right, and I will, that's a good thing about being chairman, I can have the last word, I guess. But I would like to thank all the board members for all their hard work. Sometimes you don't get the credit you deserve, but it seems like every board, you get two guys going to Richmond for our community. We had, I think, two guys at a Brasida meeting last week that was a called meeting, and it's a big sacrifice, but it's important to have people there, for the citizens of Carroll County. So I do want to thank you. I think you had a 911 meeting this morning.
Yes.
And it don't go forgotten. So thank y'all for that, and I'll entertain a motion for adjournment. All right, have a motion, have a second?
Second.
All right. I'll start the voting. Mr. Early?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mr. McCraw?
Yes.
Mr. Dixon?
Yes.
And I vote yes.